But I really want to see
Scheduled another meeting?
the final.
We have the one on the 24th. Oh, but there's not going to be one.
In a month.
No, because it's vacation week. A number of us are going away, so we'll still have the quorum issue.
That was plumbing fixtures.
How many days is it now?
So we're on. All right.
It's passed.
This is Tuesday, April 10th, 2012. This is not, while this is an advertised meeting of the North Kingstown School Committee, we did not have a quorum tonight. So while we will discuss the items on the agenda, we will not be taking any votes on the agenda tonight. We will be filming the agenda and discuss among the three of us, plus Mrs. Held from Jamestown, some of the issues on here. But as I said, there will be no votes taken. And we can't even say we come to a consensus on anything because we don't have a quorum. But we will run the meeting in general as we normally do. So I would ask the first thing that we do is we stand up and say the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I have to make a statement.
So I will say, we knew we had some issues tonight with the quorum in that Mr. Cerisi had surgery this morning at 5:30 a.m., and I do have a card going around here if it makes it to the other end. So we knew that. We also knew Mrs. Avanzato, and I won't go into the nature, but she had told us that she wasn't going to be here because of medical issues and is at the hospital, and she actually was willing to call in. The issue is that if there's three of us, and with Mrs. Avanzato calling in, we don't know whether that would basically go for the quorum that the state needs. There is statute that allows us to have someone call in when there is a medical issue, but we don't know if that means that they would have to be part of the quorum. So we believe one of our members is away. We do not know where Mrs. Benson is. She was here last night. When we asked her if she would be here tonight, she would not respond. So thus, we do not have a quorum. And I'm greatly irritated by that because I thought we had a quorum. I gave people calls, and I did not think this was going to be an issue. So, all right. Let me see. I don't think we need to do a call of order that Mr. Welch and Mr. Boscarden and myself are here, so we'll skip over that. Lorene, why don't you tell us about the calendars?
April 13th, Professional Development Day, no school for students. April 16th to April 20th, Spring Recess, no school for students. April 16th, Town Council Budget Work Session, 7 p.m., Beechwood Senior Center. April 24th, School Committee Business Meeting, 7 p.m., North Kingstown High School Cafeteria. April 25th, Policy Subcommittee Meeting, 11 a.m., Central Administration Building. May 3rd, Wellness Committee Meeting, 3:30 p.m., North Kingstown High School. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Welch.
I'm sorry, Lorene, did you talk about the meeting with the town council?
April 16th.
You did? Okay, I'm sorry, I missed it. Thank you.
Yes, and we have already told the town council that we will not have a quorum of school committee members there, as it being break week. We have some of the same issues. We have one member who is away. We have two of us who are, since it's break week, we are going away with our kids, and and Mr. Cerisi will unfortunately still be recovering from his surgery. Or I guess I should say it'll be good because he's recovered. So we'll still have a quorum issue for that time too. All right, presentations and recognitions. I do have a few things. Dr. Roger, do you have anything that you wanted to mention?
I don't think I have anything at this time.
Well, I received, I will read off, I know we've read this off before, but the North Kingstown Symphonic Band and the Senior Jazz Band won their band competition in New York City. They had competed against 21 instrumental groups from 13 different states. They won in every category they were in. So that was the bands in their school size were class schools of 1,300 or more. They received the Symphonic Gold first place with a score of 98 out of 100. Senior Jazz received Gold first place 97 out of 100. Overall, regardless of the size of the band, they again received the Symphonic Band Award. They won the Sweepstakes Prize, which means the total scores of schools with two competing ensembles. They won the Adjudicator's Choice Award, the Musician Award to Paul Spatrini for his jazz trumpet solo, and a music award to Andrew Nicastro for his jazz and symphonic alto solos. We also had the two middle schools went to the Science Olympiad a couple Saturdays ago, and they both did very well. The Wickford team was coached by Nancy LaPasta Fraser, and they came in a third in the Rhode Island Science Olympiad at Rhode Island College. Their team members were Martin Carvajal, Henry Coonrod, Brandon Morris, Lydia Segoris, Lucas Ackerman, Charlie Duane, Kirsten and Scott, Emma Cook, Jack Lee, Jordan Rogers, Brian Shamblin, Rachel Burson, Kelsey Dellinger, Adeline Sutton, and Helen Westall. For some of the kids who won individual or group awards, Lucas Ackerman and Brian Shamblin won a gold medal in the Rhodes Scholar. Kelsey Dellinger and Helen Westall won a gold medal in forestry. Jack Lee won a gold medal in Science Bowl, and Henry Coonrod and Jack Lee won a silver in meteorology. So they said a special thanks to all their helpers, Dan Duane, Craig Coonrod, Lori Ann Ionati, Lauren Bear, Mary Ackerman, Judge Sevilla, and Mr. Buzz, Jane Lakanaski, and Michael Frazier. And the DMS team in the same Olympiad came in sixth, so they were happy. Their 17 students were Dan Abreu, Will Andrews, Eunice Arcadios, I know I massacred that one, Phoebe Hawks, Josh Joan, and Elliot King Cone, Siddharth Kopaka, Bryce Lyko, Brandon Martinez, Colin Merritt, Kyle Nanning, Aiden Naughton, Rachel Patrone, Ryan Plummer, Noah Tellier, Evan Scott, and Sean Tyrell, and their coaches were Rebecca McAllister and Fran Pacheco Fogarty. The only other thing that I had about recognitions is that Dr. Auger, Dr. Humbert, and I all attended the Aladdin musical at the Susan M. Hensler Quinnesset School today, and it was a very good show. So.
Sure was.
All right, well, I would say we don't need to do citizens' comments, but if anybody in the audience wants to talk to us after this meeting, we will stick around for a couple of minutes, since we don't have a legitimate meeting. Superintendent's report.
Thank you. I just want to thank all the people who came out last night for the public hearing. It was really great to see this room filled the way it was, with a lot of parents and particularly students who were interested in, the future of this school district. And they said a lot of really great things, some in support of, increasing our budget, and some not so supportive. But I appreciate everybody coming out nonetheless. I did want to make a couple of notes about last night. First of all, when I started last night, I had some information that just wasn't right in front of me, and I didn't get it correct. And I mentioned that we were not increased for our budget in the last 3 years, and in fact, we were increased by $593,000 roughly. Mr. Embry corrected me, and that is correct. That comes up to a total of 1.2%, and that's over 3 years' time. The point I was trying to make last night is that just comparison to our health care costs, those have gone up 31% in the same period. And the point I was trying to make was that, obviously it's hard to sustain that kind of budgeting when those items are so far apart. So I just wanted to make that correction before we move on. The other thing I want to point out, while, so many of the comments were very supportive, and I really appreciate it, got a lot of follow-up emails today, I couldn't help but, notice that a lot of time was given to Mr. McGuinn last night to say a lot of comments about just about every topic that he had on his mind. And I need to respond. I didn't think it was appropriate last night to get into a shouting match back and forth, but I do want to clear some things up. You know, Mr. McGuinn is the head of the NKTO, and that organization has a mission to cut people's taxes, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But what I find offensive is his tactics, and that usually goes to the following, that he's going to do everything he possibly can to discredit the school department. We have done a lot of tremendous things in recent years to save a lot of money and to help keep taxes low, and that never seems to get recognized. When things are going well, as they are this year, meeting after meeting, we've talked about the wonderful achievements at this meeting, national band competitions and all kinds of wonderful student achievement that's happening in this district. And we're a district that is below average in spending per pupil, and we are way, way above average in achievement. We have way more in this district going right than it is going wrong, and yet Mr. McGuinn seems to have an uncanny way of finding something negative, whether it's truthful or if it's a half-truth or if it's just a basic lie, and put that on the stage to try to detract attention, make people less trustful of their school district, and less likely to want to support us when we're asking for a budget increase. And I certainly don't appreciate that. He talked about items like the Quidnesset roof. Quidnesset roof has had a lot of maintenance requests. Those requests do not gravitate to the same level that the Davisville Middle School roof does. But because Jim McGuinn made a big issue out of a roof leak, which we have from time to time, not only at Quidnesset, but at many places, all of a sudden the next day we had Channel 6 in my office asking me about the Quidnesset roof and what a major problem that is. It is not a major problem. It's an issue. We're dealing with it. Kids are fine. The roof is fine. It does not come even close to what we're dealing with the Davisville roof and the reason for that bond. That was an attempt to detract people's attention, to make people less trustful, and hopefully to defeat the bond. And fortunately, it did not work. In other issues, he's talked to us about cutting away administrators and what he calls back office help and getting the money directly to the kids. And yet, when we have just supported a consolidation effort that would save $216,000, he was immediately against it. Those consolidation efforts had to do with finance and IT and maintenance. And all of a sudden, couldn't hear from Jim McGuinn supporting anything like that, where he was bashing us for the last 2 years to try to get similar things done. If it's his idea, if it's Mr. Mudge's idea, it's a great thing. If it comes from us, all of a sudden it seems to be a problem and the school district needs to be discredited. So I just need people to know that when they hear from Jim McGuinn, that he is not out to do good things for our schools. He is out to save taxes. That is his primary concern, and his tactic is to bash our schools whenever he can. And I, for one, don't appreciate it, and I'm going to try to answer him every time he comes to the mic to let people know what we're actually dealing with when we hear from Jim McGuinn. That's all I have on that item for tonight. If we could get to the agenda, I'd appreciate it.
All right. Is there anything anybody would like to discuss in the consent agenda?
Yes.
What would you like to discuss?
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I just wanted to table number 1. I don't think I'm ready to do that yet.
You mean in the consent agenda?
The personnel items, D1, sorry.
Well, remember, we're not voting on any of them.
Nothing is
Oh, okay.
So
All
it's
right.
just a matter of we're
Right.
just discussing them.
Okay, you're right.
D2?
Go ahead. Let me discuss it.
Let me open it up here.
This is the personnel items.
Coaches?
Yeah. How are coaches funded by private funds? I didn't know that was...
The teams can have fundraisers and to support, through their own private fundraising to get a coach.
And this is Wickford Middle, right? So their track season hasn't started yet?
It has started. They had a meet. I don't know if Wickford was there last week, but Davisville was there last week. So the middle school
middle
meets.
schools have
Yeah,
started?
middle school track has started. yes.
Sometimes we have issues around, when we get the coach and the timing of meetings and stuff, and sometimes we're at the beginning of a season when we get to the point of approving the coach. It doesn't always fall comfortably a couple of weeks before the season begins, that kind of thing.
So these private fund, I mean, that's their fundraiser. I was under the impression that was not, we weren't allowed to do that, that private funds weren't allowed to pay coaches, that they could do fundraisers, but I didn't realize they could pay for the coaches. And I may be wrong,
In a lot of school districts, what they do is that extra coaches will come on, they're not funded by the school district, and the sports teams will have fundraisers. Friends of football, basketball friends, and things like that, or track, they'll bring in coaches. Parents will do fundraising, and then they'll pay for the coaches. The same way, you've got some sports where they're totally paid for by private funds for fundraising that we don't support. The reason these people are on the agenda is so that you're appointing them, and then they're covered under the insurance umbrella.
Okay. I think, doesn't this go back to, I don't know, one of the first meetings I had where Mr. Cerisi and I had talked, weren't comfortable with kids doing fundraisers, and then the money was going as stipends.
The issue that Mr. Cerisi brought up was that we had situations where we had initially approved someone as a volunteer coach,
Right.
and then later approved their payment.
Oh, that's right, it wasn't a stipend, you're right, it was a payment in kind.
We determined at that point that when someone is listed as a volunteer, they are a volunteer.
Okay. And this is not it, obviously, then.
No, this isn't one of those issues where we're changing that. They're a volunteer. And now, if the students raise money on their behalf or anything like that, they are free to do so. That's
Right.
That's not anything that the district needs to get involved with.
Right, these aren't the volunteer coaches that we were talking about earlier, then, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, all these people have to go through the same background check that all our coaches do, even though they're a volunteer. They, if there's any of the concussion training that is required for their particular sport, they have to do that. It's just that we don't pay them. But this does, by making sure we approve them, and make sure that they fall under our insurance.
Okay.
So basically the trust, that if something happens, that we then have insurance coverage.
So these guys, these coaches, not guys, these coaches have been there since day one with the kids. So it's not like the kids were unsupervised, it's just that we just haven't had the opportunity to.
Yes.
Right. Yes, because all the spring sports have started. So while we have golf on our agenda, they've already started. The softball has had their first game. The track has had 2 meets. So I don't know about the middle school track, but.
Did the girls softball win yesterday? I was watching, they were winning 4-1. I stopped before the meeting. Did they have to win it? Anybody
I
here?
didn't see the paper this morning.
Okay.
Okay, is there anything else that anyone else wanted to talk about under the consent agenda?
Where's the, oh, never mind, it's down below, okay.
So, retirement of certificated staff. These are the people that met the April 1st retirement deadline notice.
Yes.
So some of these people, or all of them, are going to qualify for the bonus, but they met the April 1st deadline.
That, first deadline?
It depends on if they met the contract requirements.
Yeah.
That'd be a question for Deb, I'm not sure.
Yeah, they did file before April 1st, so.
Okay. All right. And we ordinarily, Ned, carry a number for that?
I'd have to take a look at the projections for that. I do know that when we ran the last set of projections, we covered a lot of ground. I think right now you're safe in the budget because of what we just went through for the adjustments. Are the adjustments on this agenda, or are they on the next one?
They're on this one.
Okay. Yeah, there were adjustments as a result of the court case, and we're well covered for whatever this would be.
Okay, thank you.
Are these the early retirement? Are these early retirement? Are these normal retirement? I mean,
These are normal retirements.
Normal.
But just so you know that there's a formula that if they got to do it by April 1st, and what if they have so many years in, what is it, 15 years or something?
Yeah, it's 15, and then I think there's a certain amount per year.
They're entitled to a retirement bonus. after 15 years. I think it's like $250 a year.
I see.
All right. So that's why I was asking if some or all of these had met that criteria.
Mr. Buschgarden, I do have your answer for the softball game last night. Unfortunately, North Kingstown lost 4-1 to East Providence.
That's right. They were losing, yeah. That's too bad. They look good.
Okay, any other questions on the agenda? Or I should say the consent agenda. All right, so let's go to now unfinished business.
Do you mind if we go to the Green School first? We have a couple.
Yes, that would be fine.
We could talk about that. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago, so I don't need to go into too much detail. But you have in your packet terms of a lease agreement with the Green School. As I mentioned last time, this is a really nice fit. The Green School is looking at around 180 students or so first year, maybe a little over 200 years after that, to occupy available space at Davisville Elementary. This will be a great thing for our school district, as it will help us to cover the costs that we have for our own usage of the Davisville Elementary School. It is something that we would need the support from the town to finalize the lease. So what you have in front of you tonight is just basically the terms of the lease and an okay to go ahead to go to the town with this and get their support and make this finalized. But this would be a lease that would go over 6 years with an option after 3 years for both sides to pull out. For the district, it would have to do with issues around the revenue that would come from it in relation to the amount of money that we pay in tuition. So we would always be assured that there would be revenue coming from this to help us with our own programming. So I see it as a really great thing. I hope that you will support it. It seemed to have a lot of support when we did the presentation 2 weeks ago. I don't know if there are any further questions about any of it at this point, but
Just a couple, Doctor.
Sure.
As far as the signage, obviously that has to fall within the purview of the town and the town's requirements on signage. Maybe that should be some wording to that effect should be put in there that the size of the sign is dictated by town ordinance.
okay.
Also, if any, I was speaking with Ned this earlier, if, excuse me, if, for example, if in year 2, year 3, Green School decides that they need to make some adjustments to the way the building is laid out inside, and we approve that they make the changes, that when they leave the building, that it be put back to the way they found it, basically. Not at no cost to us. That if they make any major changes in, for example, if they want to turn 2 rooms into one and take down a wall, and we say it's okay, and they do it, that when they leave, it gets put back, and it's the way, it's the school's in the same physical condition as the way it left.
The way the lease is written is that it'll be at the permission of the person who's in the Director of Administrative Services position.
Yes.
So to your point, it would have to be acknowledged one way or the other. Yeah, you need to put it back the way it was, or you can leave it. One of the spaces that comes to mind is there was a computer room that we had looked at that they were interested in potentially partitioning off some of it, so they had some more privacy for some of the rooms. So one of the things we briefly discussed was, well, you'd need to make sure that it met fire code and that an architect was involved, so that if there was a modification, it could be made that way. That said, if it's a space that's already cut up, we may just want to leave it that way. And it'll be dependent upon whoever's in the administrative services seat to say, leave it, or no, you're going to have to remove it.
Okay.
But your point's well taken, which is that should be something agreed upon before any work is done.
Right, and if, yeah, right, I mean, if the people in charge decide, hey, what they did suits us better this way, that's fine, but if it doesn't, we should not bear the cost of getting it back to the way
Yep.
it was when we leased it out.
Yep.
And that might also almost be a separate contract that you would enter into, because it would be outside the bounds of the original contract. So if there was some sort of altercation, you could just do it that way.
Or alteration.
Yeah.
You said altercation.
Oh, okay, sorry. I meant alteration. No, not altercation. I'm hoping there's none of those.
You could do, to keep it simple, you could do a memorandum of understanding. That, okay, it's permitted under the understanding that it'll be removed when you depart.
I've never been involved in leasing a school, obviously, but I've been involved in leasing property, and if you don't spell those things out, sometimes people, when you assume,
Yep.
Okay. So if we could spell that out, that would be good, I think.
Yes, Mr. Welch.
A couple of issues. I don't think they're major ones. To get back to your signage, any signage has to be approved by the town,
Right.
and it's not on here. And so
That's what I was saying, Dick, yeah.
And remember, these are just terms that we would have. It would still be that we had let this up to the lawyers to draw up the actual lease.
I understand that, but this is something that you don't want to miss. It does require a permit from the town. Would require us to get a permit to put a sign there as well. So, I had asked for two things regarding insurance. One is a certificate that names North Kingstown, the town, and North Kingstown, the school committee, as an also insured on your insurance policy. A certificate that just says that you have insurance does not cover that.
Right.
Having it on the certificate that the town and the school department are also insured protects you. Now you have a claim against the insurance. So that's one issue that needs to be in the agreement. I also had asked for a hold harmless clause protecting the town and the school department. And that's just a legal situation that needs to be addressed in my mind. Early on, I had mentioned that the first year of the lease should be the base year for certain expenses like heat and light, trash removal, et cetera. They are going to be occupying two-thirds of the building, and as such, if they decide to leave the windows open and the heat on, we have no way of really controlling that. If they're good monitors, if they're green, I understand that.
Yeah, I was going to say, we are talking about the green people.
They're good monitors, maybe our heat bill will go down, which would be wonderful. But to establish the first year as the base year and every succeeding year, if there's an increase, et cetera, then it's adjusted accordingly.
That, I believe, is on there.
I couldn't find it. And the last thing, and I don't know if it really applies, but I'll throw it out anyway, is most leases of any kind require some kind of damage deposit.
Yes.
And I don't see this mentioned anywhere. Now, I know this isn't a lease, but this is going to be reviewed, and boilerplate is boilerplate, and you're dealing with not only folks who don't lease, you're dealing with people who don't lease on this side either. And having had a fair amount of leasing experience in the past, I'm saying that this is boilerplate to do these things, to cover everyone, both sides, and I would suggest that that be included as well. Thank you.
Anything else that anybody else wants to discuss or on that? So what we'll do is we'll put this on for our next agenda for approval, and then from there, as long as we get approval, then that will be something that we send over to our attorney and the town attorney to work out the details of actually the wording of an actual lease.
May I say something else?
Yes.
I would also say at this time that I am in favor of this. We can't afford to have empty buildings or unused facilities in this community at this point in time, and the town has, I believe, either 4 or 5 empty buildings right now in a market that is not conducive to sales and getting the right price for these assets. So I believe that this is a good move for the town as well as the school department.
I would agree with you, Mr. Wells. I do think it is a good, something good for the town and the school department, because we have said on the stage before that all the buildings we are currently in, we will need to be in next year. The Davisville Elementary School is not something that we don't need. We need it for our COSI program, and in bringing back the transitional services for our special education kids who are over the age of 18, we need that building. We don't have any place else that we could be having that program. So since the building will be open anyway, and the savings that we have the first year from the transitional program will be, basically, they cover keeping the school open. So having the green school in there is a bonus. These savings for the second year of the transitional program, because by that time we'll have more students who are over the age of 18, will be $200,000. So again, I look at this as we're going to need that building anyway. We will have more students in there. So this is just even a better way to make sure that we're covering our costs.
And I would also add that since we had the public meeting, I certainly have not received any negative back from the Davisville community. I don't know.
No.
Has there been any communication?
No.
No, I haven't had any.
No.
So there certainly has been enough time for the community to circulate, even to those people who didn't show up, and we would have heard something by now. So I think that it's reasonably safe to assume that the community is not against it.
I'd have one more question. On year one lease, I asked this offline, and I wasn't clear with the answers. On year one, $110,000, in parentheses, it says no startup costs included. What are startup costs, and what does that mean they're not included? They're not included in $110,000? They're not included in what?
We were, sure. Why don't you come to the mic so all of North Kingstown can hear you?
That's a bit of a confusing statement that shouldn't even been in there. Early on in the lease negotiations, NK had offered to put in some additional expense in getting the building ready, and we just had them pull it out. So basically we said, we're not going to ask you guys to build out our space or make changes for us. We'll just do it ourselves. And that was just part of, because Dr. Phil and Ned and other folks, we negotiated this thing back and forth many, many times. They kind of kept beating us up. And so eventually we came to terms and said, no, you don't have to do that.
So in other words, any startup costs are going to be borne completely by you, and this $110,000 is what we
The
will...
lease that you received, right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody think of any other questions that you wanted to ask?
No, that was it for me.
Okay. All right. Dr. Ajay, would there be something else you'd like to go to next?
I wouldn't mind going to the Block Island agreement. This is something that, we started with some talking with Bob Hicks, who is the superintendent in the New Shoreham School District of Block Island. And we got to talking with him about sharing IT services. North Kingstown has a very vibrant IT infrastructure for its school-based work, and so things like Aspen, the report cards that we use, all of the technology that we have, it's made for 4,500 kids. So we have a lot of capacity. Block Island is 123 kids, so taking them on is a relatively it's not so easy right at first. There's a little bit of some work involved, obviously. But once we have things going, it's like having another school right in the district, and they flow along with us. So they would share services around everything we do with IT, phone service, servers, reporting with the state, use of things like Aspen, which they are interested in getting on. All of those kinds of things, they work out pretty well when you have a volume, but for a place like Block Island with 123 students, it's cost prohibitive for them to do it on their own. So they were looking for a place like North Kingstown who could easily take them on. This is something that would get the district about $18,000 in revenue for relatively, we'll do some work to get it started, but after that, it's a lot of work that we're already doing with our own district anyway. So it's a real nice, when you talk about consolidation, this is an ideal type. Works out really nicely for us.
Yeah, I would agree. It appears to be, it just falls right into you're not doing anything special.
Right.
But the compensation part of it, 18 a year, is this a contract that is similar to the Jamestown, or it just rolls, or is it renegotiated every year? So in other words, if you realize that 18,000 isn't really getting it done after year one, after you've gone through the growing pains and seen really what it entails, I mean, there could be some hidden costs involved. Is that able to be renegotiated, or is this a 18,000 a year this year, and 5 years from now it's 18,000 a year?
The first year, the item is 23,000 because there's an issue where there is some startup costs.
Yeah, because of 5,000.
Yeah. But after that, I believe it's a year by year
You revisit it, and
revisit it. Yeah. It's not anything that we're booked for years on end.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll have to renew this contract every year then.
I believe so. I don't have that item. That I have half of the item, and I noticed that Mr. Welch is able to get more of the documents than I'm able to get on his computer. I don't know why, but I don't have that right in front of me right now, but I believe that is the case.
Okay. So that would be something, do we have a calendar where we keep track of things? I was going to ask Lorraine. Do we have a calendar we keep track of things as they roll over so that we know when things come up? That if we approve this at the next meeting, that we could then make sure that we put this on the calendar so that every year we look again at approval, that we wouldn't want to just make that assumption and forget about it.
Yeah, like a tickler file,
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
We can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I don't know if Dick has any questions about this or not. But if he does, we can always...
Snooze, you lose.
Yes, I was going to say, we can always come back to it. Dr. Ajay, what would you like to talk about next?
We could go to the administrator contracts.
Okay.
I don't know. I think that's something Mr. Welch would like to talk about. Mr. Welch, would you like to join us over here, Mr. Welch?
If he's not quite ready, I can talk about policy.
Okay.
All right, so the first policy that if we were having this would be our first read of the peanut allergy policy. Basically, the state requires us to have a food allergy policy. They specifically want it to address peanut allergies, and and they've already written it. And so this is all state language, basically, where they put in your school, we put in North Kingstown, and this is to make sure we're in compliance, because every year when we are reporting, the state asks us, do you have a food allergy / peanut policy? And, or I should say the last 2 years. And so we realized we needed to get this on the books. So this was actually sent to us by our school physician who we employ. And so unless there's any other questions about it.
So I thought you said this was boilerplate from the state.
It is, and she sent it to us. Oh. When I asked our school physician if she knew what the food allergy peanut policy should look like, she said, yes, this is what the state recommends.
Oh, okay, I understand now. Okay, sorry.
All right, so how about the gate receipts policy? Actually, these revisions came from Mr. Draper. So, Mr. Draper, if you don't mind talking about what you have suggested making changes to the gate receipt policy.
Yeah, one of the issues we noticed when we went through this was, as originally laid out, it conflicted with the chart of accounts. So what we needed to do is set up a separate fund as opposed to using the activity accounts as the vehicle to process the payments. So that's why you see there to send the money to the business office, then it's deposited in an athletic gate receipts fund. The controller would set that up. And then from there, it's actually quite simple. The money goes into the gate receipts fund. and then all expenses related to athletics are taken out of that fund, and you should see, hopefully by the end of the year, pretty much a zero out. If there's a few dollars left over, that's okay because it's a separate fund.
So this change, Ned, was made because of the, when the audit said it was, the way we were doing it was atypical? Is this what?
I don't believe it came up in the audit. This was more, we were hearing some criticisms from the town, and then the controller looked up the chart of accounts. He got back to me and said, look, we do have an issue here because we're trying to do two things at once. One was to satisfy chart of accounts and somehow isolate it. The second was to meet the school committee intent, which was to take gate receipts and assign it strictly to athletic expenses. So we did that in the original policies. We were able to get that money assigned to athletic expenses. However, we didn't do it correctly for the chart of accounts. And this policy revision makes it correct to the chart of accounts.
Okay.
And assuming it's still the committee's intent to isolate those revenue streams for athletic use, this will do that.
Yeah, in the past, what we've said is if the sports have collected money, that we would prefer that because it's people coming to see those sports, that money then go directly back
They
into the
benefit
sport,
from
right?
it. Absolutely.
Rather than going back into the general fund.
Yes.
And so this policy basically makes sure that continues to happen.
That's good. No, that's excellent.
Okay.
I like that idea.
All right, the other policy on our agenda for tonight is, sorry, as I flip a page here,
How about number
is
3?
the school committee meetings.
Yeah.
And the changes that are proposed in there, you can see that there is only one page, one change that is on page, I believe it's 4. And, yeah, on page 4, right now as we have it, that if we ever need to change the order of the meeting, that we have to have a 2/3 vote is what we've stated. And the superintendent and I talked about that was rather binding on the school committee to always have to do it one particular way. And so we've changed the wording to say the order of the business at said meeting is subject to change by the superintendent and chairperson. A guide for the meeting may be as follows. So it's not that we're getting rid of the order, but if we see the need to change it, we can. So there had been some discussion as to why correspondence was being moved to the end, and what we were finding is that when we had that in the beginning, where it is on this part that we're devoting 20, 30 minutes to it when it is really supposed to be a very quick item. So by moving it to the end, we can take care of our business items, and then correspondence, if we run out of time, correspondence is still something that we all have to read. It's something we get. It doesn't lessen the importance, but it is not taking up the majority of our meeting time. It lets us get to the agenda and other issues quicker.
Comment?
Yes.
As an observer, I understand why you sometimes felt the need to move it out of order so that you could get to more of your business, because there have been many meetings where the majority of the unfinished business did not ever come up before your time of adjourning. One other thing I noticed in here, I was just curious, it still says that the meetings are generally held at the school committee room in the central administration building. Is that something that, are all the meetings here just because you've changed them, or has that been a permanent change now with the meeting?
Oh, that's a good catch. We missed that when we were looking at that. Do you know where you saw that?
Earlier. Hang on. Meeting time and location. It's number 3 under policy stipulations.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes, we should make sure that when we vote on this, that we make that change also.
No, I mean, I know you've had them here for a while, but I didn't know if the main location is still supposed to be.
No, I would say probably that basically made that decision over the last couple of years that this is a better venue in terms of people being able to come and talk to us, that the other room was rather confining, and when all of a sudden... Right, I mean, true. Okay, so tonight we have 4 people in the audience, and we're not counting Dave here, who's doing our tech stuff. But it's just a sort of thing of, so tonight we could have very easily had it in that room. However, when you don't know from time to time as to how many people are going to be here, this is easier. So parking is easier here. People always know it's here now. So yes, I would say we have made that change. Anything else? All right, we will revisit that. The other thing on here is we suggested that we delete the teacher evaluations policy that we have, because this has been changed to a policy that RIDE has, and so basically our policy is antiquated, and we shouldn't have this in here. And that was the reason why we decided to delete our policy, because we're following what the Rhode Island Department of Education has stated.
Well, will that then, will the RIDE policy then be put into our policy manual? So we have a page that refers to the teacher evaluation within our policy manual?
No, we don't normally do that. It's the sort of thing of, we just know that that's the way to do it. It's kind of like the BEP isn't in our policy manual either. It's one of those, this is what we have to follow for our basic education plan. So we don't adopt that as policy because that's a statewide requirement.
How would somebody that was interested in seeing what that is, since it's not in our policy manual, how would somebody be able to find that?
The BEP, the basic education plan,
No,
or
no,
the teacher evaluations?
Teacher evaluation.
I'm going to pass that over to somebody else.
It's on the RIDE website.
Is it? I'm asking. I'm.
Right, it is. I'm just curious, would it be then under the teacher contract, Dr. Auger? Because there are 3 models that are in Rhode Island, and so you have the urban districts, the 6 urban districts are following one model, Coventry is following its own model, and then we've adopted the RIDE model. So that is not indicated anywhere, except that I'm thinking that it'll become part of the language for the teacher contract.
It already is part of the language for the teacher contract.
Yeah.
Since there's 3 options, 3 models that you call, would it make sense that in our policy manual, we spell that out, that the teacher evaluation in North Kingstown School District is following model A, B, or C, or the RIDE, whatever, the designation of that, the name of that policy. So it's, I think it needs to be obvious to anybody that looks through this what the evaluation is, and so if somebody wants to follow up and look at it, they know where something points them to that. If we don't have a page that outlines it, we should have a insert that says teacher evaluations now are followed by the RIDE Model 3, whatever it's really called. I don't know.
There was just an article in the paper about some changes, wasn't it?
Yes, yeah. Well, this was a pilot year, so, we implemented, and we were in gradual implementation, and there's been a lot of feedback from the field, and so the commissioner is offering some improvements and streamlining to the process, and then it's going to go to advisory council. I will be sitting on that council, and it will be finalized, I presume.
And Jamestown is one of the pilots, right?
Yes.
How are they making out?
It's been a lot of work. The administrative time has been considerable, but, it's some pushes and pulls, but I think it's going. I think they're going to get through it.
Now, is this yet another model that you guys are following?
No, that's the RIDE model.
Oh, this is the RIDE model. Okay, I did read something about that where some.
Most districts are doing what they're calling gradual implementation. We're a gradual implementation district, and that's plenty of work already. Mm-hmm. What they're doing is the full implementation, which is significantly more, and that's where everyone would be going next year. What the commissioner just did is draw back a little bit on those requirements to make it a little less time-consuming.
Because they figured it was going to take 10 hours, and now it's way more than that. That's what I'd read. That's kind of daunting, huh?
I mean, you have 386 teachers.
Yeah.
One more reason to appreciate Jamestown for all the hard work that it's doing, leading the way. on teacher evaluations.
Working the bugs out, huh?
Well, what I would say, Mr. Busgarden, to your question is that I see what you're saying about, do we need to have something of this formalized rather than just removing the policy and knowing this is how we do it. So I would still say we need to delete this policy because this policy...
Not being used, right?
Right, it's not being used and it's not how we're supposed to use it.
And that's-
However, I think your question is a good one, and we'll bring that up in our next policy meeting to discuss where that would be, and we can talk to Dr. Humbert just about where that should be, the item as to where we address that, because I'm not really sure. So you're saying, should that be something we put in the policy manual? And I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I'm not sure. So, I'd rather not just throw something out, but I'd rather think about it, discuss it, and then come back and answer your question rather than just trying to give you an answer for right now. Mm-hmm. Okay? Any other questions on the policies? We don't have GCB. We did take that off of the agenda, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. So, the only other policy that we had on there is we had BCA, the school committee members' code of ethics. I wanted to bring this forward because this is what we have right now in our code of ethics of how we are to treat each other in our meetings, our conduct, and that sort of thing. So here is my question to the committee, is I was looking through Robert's Rules of Orders for saying, okay, so what do we do when any one of us suddenly goes off at a meeting? So let's say that I become irate and you guys need to figure out how you're going to get me back in having the proper decorum. It's the sort of thing of Robert's Rules of Order offers a couple of things. And one of the first things it suggests is that the members take a break. And so if I became such that you were just like, Kim, you need to calm down, that you could say, I motion that we take a recess, and then we would take a recess. And just that may be enough time for me to come back where I am okay, where I'm no longer the issue. While I still may feel very passionately about it, I don't feel the need to express that passion anymore. I'm wondering if that is the way we want to handle this, because anything that we do in terms of looking how these meetings run, we have to do the same for everybody that's here. Yeah. So it's the sort of thing. That was the first thing that Robert suggested. The other thing that Robert suggested is what we had started in that there is always a motion made, it is seconded, and then you keep to a very strict schedule of the motion. One of the things that in looking at some of other organizations that use Robert's Rules of Order is they suggest that you merely go down and each person gets a time limit. And so that's your time limit to discuss it. You say all that you want to say, and then within your time limit, and then after you've said that, then we don't go back and revisit the issue. Now, if the whole body then decides that, yes, they would like to talk some more about this, then we give everybody another, 3-5 minutes, and we go down the table again. But then it eliminates the back and forth. It would eliminate well, I want to address what you have said. It would become a very orderly fashion of how you would conduct the meeting and how each person would talk. That was another thing that and this was purely for discussion as it is on the agenda. We weren't going to be doing any voting on this. But that is my question to this committee, is what is the direction of when we all become very passionate, when we are doing where we're not listening to one another, how do we want to address those? What is the order or the means that you want to get us back on task? Dr.
I would recommend something that I believe I read Dick August focused on maybe about a year and a half ago in an editorial that he had done. And he basically said something to the effect of, I think he said this, that people would have basically 3 minutes when everyone would get a turn for 3 minutes to say what they need to say about an issue, and then everyone would be given a minute to follow up. So if someone said something that you particularly disagree with and you want to, counter that, and that's done in debates. and it works. But, it's a matter of, you got to keep strict to that time. And when you do, a lot of people will say, well, I only have, 30 seconds that I need. I'm just going to say that, and we can move on. And I think it would really be a positive thing to keeping the meeting moving and everyone understanding that this is the limit that you get to speak on this, and we move on.
Mr. Welch.
Dr. Auger, you're not taking into consideration in what you just said the personalities that exist on this committee, that they're not buying into decorum, acting professional, not running over the chair, not looking at being acknowledged before they speak. You can set up all the rules you want. If the speed limit is 40 miles an hour and they're going to do 55, whether you like it or not. And all the rules that, there's no penalty for being obstinate, for being loud, for being unruly. These are elected individuals that are going to do and say just as they damn well please, regardless of what you and I or any normal person thinks. So, we had this with Joe Thompson, we have it with Mel Benson, and we have it with Bill Mudge. And anyone who is reasonable realizes that they're out of control. Now, so your rules mean nothing.
Well, I think there are two things. I think that kind of a rule can work, but then you need another rule, and that is when someone breaks this format or any format, gets unruly or doesn't wait to be acknowledged, all of that person gets a warning from the chair, and if we need to go to a second warning for something like that, we have a recess and the person is escorted from the room. And I feel that is the best way to make absolutely sure that this is going to continue to flow, because I'm with you. I mean, I feel like our meetings get hijacked by a couple of people, and we all know who they are. And I really resent it, because we all have very busy days, and the people come out here to see these things, and they don't want to see a circus up here of people shouting at one another. It's disrespectful in so many different ways to all of us who are doing the best we can to give of our time. So I feel like that would be a really good thing to get some order back into these meetings. And all it has to, we just have to do it once or twice, I believe. And I would hope that those people would fall right in line after that.
Go ahead, Mr. Buskard, and then I'll speak.
I understand, at least I think I do, your feeling, Dick. I mean, I haven't been here very long, but I can only imagine the amount of frustration you have just sitting up here as long as you have, having to deal with some of the things. But there has to be a way we handle it for everybody. In other words, I think I understand what you're saying, but there has to be the rules. There has to be, this is step one, this is step two, and this is strike three. And it has to be for everybody, while granted, it may never come into play with the majority of us, but we still have to have that escalation of discipline, if you will, so when, okay, that's it, you're done, we're out, it's all over. And I like the idea what you were saying about taking the break. I think that, although that could really make the meetings go long.
It doesn't have to be a long one.
Sure. But
3 minutes?
Yes.
Difference.
But I think to take the
timeout?
The timeout, exactly. You get a timeout, and after that, you're done. But I think there needs to be a clear-cut.
You do understand I'm not arguing against it.
The rules.
Right. I'm not arguing against it.
You're just saying it doesn't matter.
I'm just saying, please remember the individuals. And if you remember, and I don't know if you remember it, but certainly, Kim, I think you do, when Don DeFidel was chairperson.
I remember that.
We had a policeman there, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do not want to go back to having
No.
policemen. I mean, one, we talk about, I think our meetings can run with more decorum, that we don't need to take that fiscal step of hiring a police officer for the meetings. I tell you, the one thing that I'm I like the idea of the breaks. I like the idea of making sure that we talk about, hey, this is your time limit to follow that. I think that escalating to the part where because everybody has a free speech right, and we're all elected officials, we may say things that we really disagree and even hate what somebody else says. But I do think it comes down to free speech, that a disorderly conduct sort of thing, or even saying, oh, you're interrupting the meeting merely because you disagree with the other members of the meeting, is going to be a hard thing to say that is then disorderly conduct. Right. I think the breaks will be far better, or I hope it will be far better than coming down to where, say, we were calling the police, because I think that will meet with a lot of resistance.
And that sends a message I don't know that we really want to send, to the public, that we have to, we can't control this. We have to get law enforcement involved. I'm just not comfortable going that step right now.
And I don't think it had always happened in the meetings, even on Beef Deli, that people were truly escorted out. I know sometimes they were, but I think other times they weren't. So I think that would be the thing was...
What are you talking about over there?
Yeah, that, I don't want to get into the situation where we're saying that something isn't going well, we call an officer, and the officer said, Mrs. Page, you have the perfect right to go off on everybody, and you're all stuck with me. It's the sort of thing of that really just would not be the situation that I think will then bring us back into the meeting, being able to have a lucid discussion.
I'm in favor of your rules.
Yeah.
Okay.
I really am.
No, I know.
You're just skeptical whether it's going to work.
You have to
Worth trying.
recognize the
Yes.
personalities. That's
Do an experiment. Try it out.
All right. Well, then, from what it sounds like from this discussion, we don't necessarily need to make any changes to the BCA policy.
Actually, I have one more comment.
Go ahead.
I would encourage you to think about putting number 11 first.
11 first.
Recognize the first and greatest concern must be educational welfare of the students attending the public schools.
That's in our school committee, the statute that establishes the rights and responsibilities of school committees. That's first.
So you're suggesting
No, it was just an observation.
No, that's...
Good observation.
Excellent observation.
I'll take note of that.
Number 14 is also pertinent to tonight.
Oh, no, come on, don't.
Attend regularly scheduled school meetings. Yes. I agree on that.
Actually, that brings up because I've had this question with you before in other situations. We have no recourse if somebody habitually misses meetings and they have no real legitimate reason to miss a meeting, right?
No, we don't. I mean, that's basically, we're stuck, and the only thing we can say to the voters is, don't vote for this person again. They're not coming here. They're not showing up. They're not doing what they were elected to do. But, no, we don't have any recourse.
And there's nothing we can do to change that.
No.
You can have a recall, but good luck.
Yeah.
No, I didn't mean to that extent. I meant as a committee, is there nothing we can...
Well, we can say bad person, but...
Really, there's really nothing we can do.
Bring in someone from the bullpen.
What's that?
Bring in someone from the bullpen, is that what you mean? Have someone on reserve?
No, I don't even mean that. No, I just mean, I don't know, some sort of, reprimand. I don't know. I don't know. I just...
We don't have
wonder.
any sort of a committee reprimand. I'm not really, people talk about a censure, but I mean, that's essentially what you're saying is, we're formally saying, bad person, we don't like what you do.
You could publish quarterly or something, a record of attendance.
Well, that's something there, yeah.
Well, you can get that right now on IQM too.
Oh, you can?
That you can type in, Lorraine, how do? You type in attendance and the person's name, and
When you go to the homepage, you put in
it's on the
school
search
committee
up at the top.
members. On search, it's a tab. I have to find it, but
We
it's
get a
on a
star next to our
tab.
name if we have perfect attendance.
I can ask
Yeah, you
them
get to
add
clean the
that.
erasers, Dick. You get to go out and clean the...
Yeah, wait for it now.
I'm going back to...
It's under Contact Us, and then you can click on the blue. I'm going to click Kimberly Page.
She's
And then
always
her
late.
voting
That's-
record and her attendance is 100%.
Wow.
So
Get to clap the erasers.
I get the gold star?
You know, you get to go clean your races.
Okay.
But yeah, just click on the blue and you can get that from anyone. Contact us is what you want.
All right. Oh, I see we can all put pictures into the contact us. Lorraine is the only person who has a picture there. All right.
Get everyone's picture there.
Anything else that we want to discuss in policy?
I'm not clear. Are you saying that we are not going to add to the Code of Ethics and Conduct?
Correct. Although maybe we might switch around the order a little bit. What we can say is, we already are, by one of our other policies, we say we follow Robert's Rules of Order. And so within that, it gives us the mechanisms to be able to talk about what we do when we start down the road of not being able to keep on a schedule or keep on a discussion that is, I don't want to say fluid, but
Well, in other words, when somebody gets unruly, Robert's Rules of
Right.
Order has the mechanisms in place that we can call for the recess, right? Like, somebody can
Right.
say move to recess,
yes.
and second, and then we, okay. So there's no reason to spell it out, I think what you're asking, right?
Right.
No reason
That's what I'm
to
asking.
put that out.
Yeah, this is for tonight as a discussion item. So if somebody wants to bring this up again because you have a better idea or something you'd like to bring before the committee, we can always put it back on the agenda as then a old business, that's something that we could be voting on. Obviously, tonight, we're not doing any voting at all. And it wasn't, but this wasn't scheduled for voting tonight anyway. So the answer is no, we aren't making any proposed changes right now. But if you have suggestions, Dr. Humbert,
Well, I think if we're going to follow the Robert's rules, then, and it's stated in there, but I really do think that it may be a review of the conduct, I think, is in order. And so that people are clear what happens, that people have to be, I think it should be reviewed, that people need to be called on before they respond, that people cannot interrupt if somebody's already speaking, that people are not disrespectful to the chair. I don't know if that's in Robert's rules at any point. And then I think we need to review what happens when that occurs, because we seem to go to a certain point and we're running okay and we're on task, and then something starts to bubble and it quickly gets out of control. And I think we lose focus on, we have really important business that we have to accomplish. And I think we tend to lose a sense when the behavior occurs like that. We lose the sense of what our intent is at this meeting, and we lose the purpose of it. And I think it's critical that we review that and make a change.
That's a good point. You know, kids that go to college and play in NCAA sports, they have to sign a code of conduct. I never did when I took the seat. Is that something that, when you get elected, I mean, if you got on the school committee through normal channels, is there something that's required that people to read the code of conduct and acknowledge they read it and sign it, which in essence is saying, I agree to follow these rules? Maybe, I mean,
we don't have anything like that, but it isn't, it is a good idea.
But how are you going to make an elected official sign a code of conduct?
I don't know.
We can't.
you
You can
can't?
ask everybody, but you're right. It's not like we could say, you have to sign or you can't sit at the table. But perhaps in reviewing it, it's reminding everyone and asking if they want to voluntarily sign it.
So, I mean, even if you say by signing, you're just acknowledging that you read it, you can't even ask somebody to do that?
You can't make them do it, no.
Yeah,
They're an
they
elected
can't make
official.
it.
The voted, the only people they answer to are the voters who put them here. So the only way you can really, discipline, get rid of, sanction a committee member is for having them voted out of office. Unfortunately, that is the only thing you can do.
Well, we do take an oath when we are elected.
Correct.
And that oath does discuss the your role and the thing about educational welfare of the town's children.
Right, but it doesn't
But it
say I
doesn't
have to behave
specify
as
a
school
code of
committee.
conduct.
Yeah, we just read it.
I know.
Yeah, but it's rather vague enough that it's not one of those things that so if you're advocating passionately for a point,
Right.
it certainly, that would be within the bounds of the oath that you take.
There is advocating passionately for a point, but there is a point where, and does a chairperson have the discretion to say that, all right, this person is now disrupting a public meeting,
Absolutely.
and we need to take a recess, and this person needs to be escorted? I mean, we've done that with Mr. McGuinn, as I recall, a year and a half ago or so, where he was getting unruly. We stopped the meeting, and a police officer escorted him from the room.
Because the school committee is a meeting held in public, and they have a right to do their business. And anyone interfering with the business of the school committee can be asked to leave, and if they're interrupting it, you can get a police escort. And I think that's what we did that night when a person in the audience. I mean, you can do the same thing with the school committee person if they're unruly, but I think the better action is to take a recess, see if the person will calm down, and then go back, and then if not, move to say you're disrupting the
I would
business
agree
of
with
the school
that.
committee. But as far as, I mean, they come back the next time. If they're unruly again, well, that's different, and then it's up to the voters to say, you're not doing the job you were put in here to do, and we're going to vote you out of office.
Okay. Is there any other anything anybody else would like to say about this?
Well, I just want to reemphasize the fact that we have codes of conduct throughout our whole school system, and we hold students accountable to them, and we hold professional staff accountable to them, and I think it should be modeled at the level of the school committee. We have bullying policies, we have all kinds of policies, and we're actually right now rewriting some of our student conduct policies. And so I think that it's very important for us to model from the top what kind of, how we collaborate with each other and act professionally and respectfully towards one another.
Well, I have no problem having a code of conduct. I would sign it. I mean, I have no problem. I realize we can't make everybody sign it, but, maybe if somebody doesn't sign it, there's a red flag right there to be, So, I mean, personally, I don't know. I tend to agree with you, Doctor, that that's the way to go about it, but I realize that legally there's no standing, but I think a point needs to be made as officially as we can that there's a code of conduct to be followed, and there's also going to be, there's a price to pay if you don't, I guess.
So it sounds like from this discussion that you guys would like this put on sometime for a future agenda.
I would, yes.
Okay. Now, maybe we can put this back on in May. All right. Okay. Dr. Roget, that takes us, we're jumping around here. There's a couple other things, but why don't you talk about the contracts?
The contracts that you have in front of you, this is something else I want to clarify, and this goes back to my comments of, Mr. McGuinn made a big deal about this last night, saying that the school department is looking to give increases to its administrators at a time when other people in the school department are not getting an increase. Our teachers right now are in a 3-year contract. And that 3-year contract lists them as having a 0% increase in year 1, a 1% increase in year 2, and a 1% increase in year 3. That was a very fair contract. It was something where when you take into account the hits that they took on their Blue Cross copayment, all teachers went back significantly, thousands of dollars in what they actually take home. What I was originally trying to do, and what Mr. McGuinn was pointing out last night, was reorganize our salary scale for administrators to such a point that it doesn't really become an issue from year to year. If the teachers are on a year where they have a 0 increase, all administrators get a 0 increase, and everyone goes together. To me, that's fair. There's never an issue of, well, the administrators are getting special treatment, or if it's, why isn't it good for us if it's good for them, that kind of a thing. Everyone kind of goes together. That's what we were trying to establish, and he pointed out that, look, this would set everyone up for a 1% increase. Last year, it would have set everyone up for a 0, and that didn't happen. Okay, so as, you know, we create contract conditions, you know, that's something that I feel strongly about. And, you know, that was the nature of that proposal last night. Of course, Mr. McGuinn made it out to be that the administrators are getting fat and happy while everybody else is asked to take massive pay cuts. And that's simply just not the case. What we have in front tonight, I understand that right now, given the economic conditions that we have, that it's not something that we want to work on just yet, maybe down the line. But this is a straightforward, what I have originally proposed is simply to do in a more simple manner what I've just looked to do, that all of our teachers are getting 1% increase this year. I'm looking to do that with the following administrators you have in front of you. But I understand there's a will in the committee to continue doing what we had a few times in the past, and that is simply to do a 0 increase for these administrators and continue with a merit pay format where the superintendent has some discretion to give an administrator some minimal amount of merit pay for good performance, and that pay would be based on their performance and work with their evaluation. So I'm supportive of that, going to that kind of a format, a 0% and continuing with the merit pay as we already have it in the budget. And so, you know, I'll just open it up for any comments on that, but that's you know, what I would propose.
I'm glad that it's going to be a merit pay situation because, you know, honestly, all I've ever done in 25 years of work is hire people, promote people, fire people, give people raises, and not give them raises. And I do know that merit pay works. If people know that they're working towards something, they're going to work towards it. If they realize they're going to get a 1%, 2%, or whatever it is, just because they're there, then that's the kind of effort you're going to get. Not from everybody, but from a lot of people. And I think merit pay is an important way for you to also see where your weak links are. If you're not evaluating and you're not looking at performance, then you don't know where your weak links are, so you don't know where you can make improvements. And I think merit pay is a very good way to go about looking at how people are remunerated within the system.
Mr. Welch, I know you've had strong feelings on this. Did you want to say anything?
I was the original person that proposed merit pay back 2.5, 3 years ago for principals, with the idea in mind that if it was successful and we were able to achieve the goals that the school committee has, to achieve performance levels that we didn't have at the time, bearing in mind that the principals of the schools are the guiding light and the managers of those schools, and knowing what the requirements are for things like kneecap, et cetera. If they're doing their job well, I certainly did not have a problem in rewarding excellence. The thing that I've always felt about positions where there is no reward for excellence or acknowledgement is that it then falls to the lowest common denominator, whether it's acknowledged or not. And by that I mean, if 3 people sitting in the same slot as I am are doing less than I am, then why am I doing more?
Bingo.
And it doesn't encourage me to do more. It encourages me to meet the standard that the other 3 people have set. I know that we have excellent people. I understand that, in both administration and in teachers. So why not give them an extra push? I understand that there is a feeling that teachers and administrators don't need that. They're teachers and administrators because that's what they want to do. I guess I'm in the same situation. I'm in the same place that John is in, and that's why I recommended it. Everybody puts the pressure on the point that they want to make using the statistics that they want to use that's going to back up their theory. I constantly hear across the country that teachers need to be paid more, and yet in this community and in this state, people constantly want to say that teachers get paid too much. It's a bouncing ball. We're achieving levels of performance that I've always questioned as not where do we stand in Rhode Island, but where do we stand in the region and in the country. Rhode Island is 49th in the country in education. We're in the top 5 or 7 in cost per student. North Kingstown is number 3 in the state. So you're number 3 in a state that's number 49th in the country, and the state is number 5 or 7 in the country for the cost of education. You know, all of that just boggles my mind because it's going in all kinds of different directions. Yet I look at where our students, when they graduate, where they go to college, where they're accepted to college, our graduation rates. Commissioner Gist sat right here and congratulated us for having such a high graduation rate. Non-dropout rate, what was it, about 94.6%, I think? She said, your district is to be congratulated for having that achievement. You're going to have some fallout regardless how hard you work at it. And before I came on this committee, I was just as difficult or impossible as some of the rest of the residents in this community about what we spend on education. I'm still mindful of the dollar, as the superintendent and others could certainly attest to. But it's just not an easy answer to point to anything and say, this is the magic button. And I'll stop talking.
Well, Dr. Auger, you and I have had a long conversation about this topic, about where we should go with these contracts, and you have talked to more school committee members than I have. But I think what we have surmised is that probably the contracts as they are presently written are not going to get past the school committee. And so your proposal for tonight has been that the next time we vote on these, that they all contain a 0% increase. But one of the things this committee should realize is that we didn't really fund the merit pay when we made up the budget. And so one of the things we need to do in giving all these folks a 0 will be move the money that we had originally. We're going to use, we need to put that into the merit pay so that the merit pay is funded, because otherwise you're kind of even building up, you're trying to use merit pay and you don't have any money to give people. So,
but these pay increases that were proposed here are in the budget, right?
Right.
Yes.
right.
Well,
so
then
you
we just take that money and put it into, you're just moving from column A to column B.
correct.
Where it came from in the first place?
I have one question, too, about, I think there is some research about some experiments with merit pay systems in various educational districts, and not necessarily Rhode Island, but elsewhere, having really not worked. Everybody's over there is smiling.
Yeah.
That was in our school committee magazine, yes.
Right.
But why does it work?
Well, but I just
Everywhere
think
else.
it depends. No, it does. No, the research shows that in some places it really hasn't worked. So I think it matters a lot how you set it up, right? So
In business, merit pay works. In everything, every private sector, merit pay works.
But you do have a different model, and you have a model where you're getting paid on achievement and assessment versus all your kids are going to school, you have to teach them all. Yes, you have to make sure that they are learning, but do you then get penalized when you have a kid who has so many family issues
who doesn't have
that
direct control and stuff.
yeah,
it's hard.
everything's, you don't have any issues there.
Absolutely.
Hard
No.
to set it up right.
Right. Do you base it just on student performance? Absolutely not, because there's so many other things teachers have to do besides teaching.
We're not talking about the teachers.
Or the
Yeah, we're
administrators.
talking about the administrators.
Well, then you don't, no, there's other things they have to do. They're not responsible for the educate, they're directly responsible for the grades kids get in Mr. Ferrara's class.
But that's why it's hard to set up a good merit evaluation system.
Well, no, there's functions that they perform. Did they perform those functions admirably, yes or no? No, I disagree. I don't see how it can be that hard.
Like I said, I'm going to support what it sounds like the committee wants to go. But I will say that I think in terms of our principals, the reason that we have these, and we have to give, by state law, we have to give our principals contracts. I want to just make sure I say that because I know there have been people who are like, why are you giving these people contracts? Well, that's why. But I think the people who we have hired as principals are people who are high achieving. They're people who are not slackers to begin with. And so it's one of those things of,
right?
well, so then you're looking at people who they're going to achieve whether they get the merit pay or not. I don't think that that's the motivation.
The principal's answer to the superintendent, right? So it's the superintendent determining who gets raises and who doesn't.
But it goes with the Dick says. If principal over here, and they all get together and they talk, and the guy says, hey, I haven't done all that, and nobody even has checked to see if I've done all that. So I don't have, and so the other guy's one that's breaking, that's breaking his back to make sure everything is. And he's going, well, he's getting his one, and he's not. He hasn't done this. He hasn't done this. He hasn't done this.
But then a principal would also have some incentive, maybe not to try to rock the boat with the superintendent too. So I mean, there are things.
I mean,
they're the person evaluating them and determining whether they get a raise.
I mean, a principal is actually easier to get rid of than a teacher.
Yeah.
Because the principal, we have a contract that is at the most 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then you
So
can
if they're not
say,
doing the job,
we're not going to renew your contract. The teachers are tenured.
Yeah.
So, if anything, that's why I say, I don't think this is necessarily, to our principals, a motivator.
So everybody on here is a principal. Is that what you're saying? I don't think so.
No, there are 3 contracts that are not principal contracts.
Okay. Those 3 then? You have a director, and a manager.
And like I said, I'm in agreement with what is being said. I'm just saying that in going this route, I don't want the committee to think, oh, we're doing merit pay, we're doing great things. I'm saying I don't really think that this has worked as we had hoped it would work.
Just to, I brought that up before about the research. The research that I have looked at, I believe it is research of teachers, say, in the New York City school system. So, you're not necessarily comparing apples to apples here necessarily, but and what they found was that over years of implementation, they saw no difference in student achievement, but not specifically for, say, a director or administrator only. So it's hard to say, but I cited that as well before. Anyway.
All right, Dr. J, I see 2 other things that we probably want to talk about tonight. This is our first school committee meeting after the bond has passed, so I figured you wanted to say something about that. And
we could go to the 2011-12 school budget and work our way A, B, and C.
Okay.
Last night we talked a lot about, or actually we didn't talk all that much about our budget, but a couple of things have happened recently that have done some good things for our budget. We have been involved in a court case with the town, and in that court case, the determination was that the original appropriation of $58,092,043, I can't believe I know that number by heart these days, but that is indeed has been determined by Judge Stern in Superior Court to be the number that we are working from. And that being the case, allows us to do a number of things and get to a point where our current balance, this is a bouncing ball. I just found out today that there was a decision made involving a DCYF situation that all of a sudden a $60,000 tuition is something that we don't have to pay anymore. So the $60,000 to the good. So a lot of things keep going back and forth. There's another item in our at the end of our agenda on correspondence from Sirico, where the disbandment of Sirico resulted in $20,000 to the district that just came in. So, some good things in terms of, a couple of items trending in the right direction. Anyway, we're currently at a surplus of over $300,000, somewhere between $300,000 and $400,000, and we'll continue to, publish the monthly report with that number. But and like I said, the number changes from day to day. But those things are good, and part of this this movement of money related to the court case. Also, in preparing for this, we did something that we normally wait to do till the very end of the year, and that is to look at all available fund lines, look at what is available, money that hasn't been spent yet, and really do kind of a cleansing of the budget. And I have worked with Steve Janelle to do that, and we were able to, do things like not purchase certain IT equipment that we would normally purchase right now. We're going to wait till July 1st. Some janitorial supplies, other kinds of things, and that some professional development that we were thinking of doing that we would wait till the summer. And basically take about 75% of all available money in those kinds of items, supplies, that sort of thing. And we're, that turned out to be another $500,000 that we were able to turn around, just to make sure that, as we've been saying all along, that we are not going to end the year in a deficit. Right now, I'm happy to report that we're not even close to a deficit, where we have at least a $300,000 to $400,000 surplus as things go right now. And one of the things that we need to do is to reverse some money that we had used earlier in the year from fund balance to put it back in our fund balance where it belongs. I'm going to ask Mr. Draper to talk a little bit about what those items are.
Yeah, if the committee would recall, the actions that were taken totaled up to about $438,000, and those items were comprised of $117,000, which was an early retirement incentive. There was $65,000, which was a cafeteria loss that was anticipated, and the balance was for new positions that were established in August. That totaled up to roughly $438,000. When the deficit report for November was filed in December, the basis of that deficit was the actual revenues we expected to get in. As I think everybody's aware now, when Judge Stern delivered his final disposition of the trial, he said that the number was actually $58,092,043, which I remember, which is due from the town to the school district. By stating it that way, that's roughly $700,000 in additional revenue that is now available to the school department that was not before, because the revenue was based on what we thought was actually going to come in, not that number, the $58 million number. Plugging in the $58 million, the $438,000 that was originally moved from fund balance is no longer necessary. So those entries can be reversed. Now, whatever, as the superintendent stated, now whatever is left over for a surplus will go back to fund balance. So the $438,000 in fund balance will no longer be necessary to make up that shortfall. If all the cuts go through as expected per the superintendent's estimation, and you have a $300,000 surplus, that will actually go to your fund balance for fiscal year 12 as well. So you could end fiscal year 12 with a very, very healthy outcome.
Questions? All right. Dr. Auger, did you want to talk, go to the next item?
Yes, the next item is the 2012-2013 budget, and, this is another item that I feel is important for our community to know about. We have just received in the mail today the accelerated school budget examination of the which is affectionately known, everyone's been calling it the BEP audit. NATO Wadovic LLP, which is Jeff Wadovic and Sal Augeri. Sal is a former superintendent. Jeff is an auditor, CPA, and they have done an audit paid for by the town, commissioned by the town, of the school department to see how we are doing in compliance with the BEP, the Basic Educational Program that is mandatory, what school districts must have, the basics. And in that report, they have worked with us to look at the BEP, and they have asked us, we've done a lot of work with them to look at what are the basics and where do we feel we are in compliance, and they have looked at that with us. And I'm very pleased with the results. They are both very good people to work with. I think we had an excellent relationship. And when the final results came in, there were probably about 13 to 14 different items where they felt that we could use additional funding to meet basic compliance for the BEP. And I'm going to read a quote from that tonight. The minimum amount of funding we consider to be reasonable planning estimate required to keep the district in full compliance with the BEP as it moves forward during the next 2 or 3 years at this point in time totals $2,099,602. So to me, that is a tremendous validation of the kinds of petitioning that we have been doing in the last few days, particularly at last night's meeting, where we had a good-sized crowd in this audience, and a lot of people came out to advocate for increased funding to the schools. We have been obviously saying these kinds of things all along, that there's a lot of things, basic kinds of things, that we could be doing much better than we're doing now if we had, increased funding to do those things. And this audit, this BEP audit, validates that. This is an item that I really wish we had available yesterday when this auditorium was a lot more full than it is tonight, because it really would have spoken, and I'm sure a lot of people on the school committee, and myself included, would have loved to speak about this audit and let the community know. And I'm hoping that a lot of people are tuning in tonight to hear this, because it really is a great validation. It validates, it talks about how it would be very important to have the bond passed, and thankfully it did. And I appreciate the hard work that many of our parents have done to get the word out and to get the vote out, and making that possible. That's going to help us. But this also validates what we've been saying all along about how we really do need some increase in funding right now to do not, luxurious kinds of things, not to go crazy, but just to get to the basics. And so it's a really nice validation of that. This was asked for by Dick August last night at the microphone, and Mr. Embry said that he had received it yesterday at noon. And I really wish we could have gotten it yesterday afternoon and been able to review it before the meeting, because it really would have, I think, changed the tenor of the conversation quite a bit. And, this report came out on February 13th. So I don't know why Mr. Embry would have gotten it yesterday at noon. And I'm not so sure why we wouldn't have gotten a copy before the meeting. But the case, as it is, we received it today, and I'm very pleased with what it says. I think it's a confirmation and a validation of the points we've been trying to make around our budget.
Well, I know that people would like to discuss this. We all just picked up our own
Right.
reports, if not this evening, then this afternoon, and so,
I don't know if there are plans for the town council and the school committee to meet with the authors of this audit at some point and go over it, or, but I would imagine it would be a good thing to have this on our future agendas, to talk about it in more depth. Perhaps I could make some kind of a presentation to the committee at some point going over the details.
yeah, I do notice in the summary that it talks about that it suggests a time frame of 2 or 3 years to complete. It then gives, it thanks the superintendent and the school administration team for all of their help in putting this together. It lays out some very specific areas where it says, oh, this is done well and this could be done better. But it is definitely an affirmation of what we've been doing and saying that we are doing it within a very reasonable cost to the taxpayers here. And I think that's the message that needs to get out, is that we're not up here wasting money as per the audit that was done by the town. It does seem as if it was such a favorable audit. It was the best $20,000 that could have been spent for us, because it does validate things that we have been saying for a long time, and I hope people have a chance to take a look at it. All right, so are we going to put this up on any sort of, so that,
think-
Is it available
Yes.
to read online or anything?
Yeah, we'll put it on the district web page tomorrow.
okay. Anything else, any other comments about it?
No,
Like
I
said,
just wanted to be able to look at it myself.
we could always let you take a copy, and
There's one here I've been eyeing.
That would be fine.
that would be fine, Julia. Go ahead and take that copy with you. We'll make sure that.
We'll make sure Mel gets another copy.
Yeah, we'll make sure Mel gets a different one.
Thank you very much.
Since she wasn't here to pick hers up,
Oh, let's not go there.
that's all I said.
I have to call for a recess if you get worked up.
Well, this isn't a meeting, so it just wrapped.
There we go.
Shout all you want.
So did you want to say anything about the referendum results and the next steps?
Yeah, we're obviously really pleased about the results. I want to thank, those people who came out and gave the support. Even though those off-election cycle referendums don't really get a lot of turnout, I believe that, there was significant turnout in favor of this, and it was a lot of people who understand the value of our schools that really helped support this and make it happen, and I really appreciate it. We are on schedule with the Davisville Middle School roof, Mr. Draper. Things,
right now?
yeah, things have been moving along. We've done a lot of prep work before the bond happened. I know there was a facility subcommittee meeting just the other day, and things seem to be moving along on schedule, so that as things stand right now, we should be seeing that Davisville Middle School roof being repaired this summer.
Speaking of which, it's been a concern of some of the people in the community that we didn't need the bond, and that the school committee, this school committee, has neglected its responsibility to take care of its buildings, and that we should have had it in our budget. And I just checked the budget book while you folks were talking, and in the last 10 years, there was 4 years in which no money was funded into the CIP by the town. 4 out of the last 10. In the last 10 years, $542,000, $330 total was put into the CIP. Now, the CIP is capital improvement plan, and it's for capital improvement. It's not for maintenance. It's for roofs and windows and HVAC systems, et cetera, capital improvements. not maintenance. The last time the town funded the $500,000 that they had planned on doing on an annual basis was 2002, 11 years ago. Many people had said that the school committee had not done their job. I'm here to tell you that I sat in this auditorium, maybe 7, 8 years ago, and Dave Burnham stood up as chairman of the committee that reviewed the school facilities in North Kingstown and said to the then president of the town council, we need to spend $47 million on the school facilities in North Kingstown now. Now, I really wanted to ask at that point in time, the gentleman is no longer with us. Dave had been president of the town council for several years. Prior to his term on town council, he was on school committee. And when he was no longer president of the town council and heading this committee, the committee came up with $47 million to spend on the buildings. I only bring this up because it gets old and tiring to listen to people complaining about what the school committee hasn't done to maintain the facilities. It doesn't, capital improvements are not part of our budget. Every year we submit, on the recommendation of the business director, a prioritized list of capital improvement items in a 5-year plan. That's required by the town. It goes to asset management for their review and approval, and then they make a recommendation to the town council on the priority of the items that are listed in that report for the council to, A, recognize, B, budget for, C, finance. And as you can see, I'm telling you, you can go right to the budget book and see these numbers. The town council in the last 10 years has seen fit not to do that. During that same period of time, okay, the town's rainy day fund, I think that's a really unique name because that's what they call it. The town, as of the audit for June 30th, 2011, had $9,157,000 in change in the rainy day fund. Now, I understand that the town needs to have a rainy day fund. I also understand that the town needs to fund maintaining its assets. And having money in the bank and not taking care of your assets doesn't really work for me as a taxpayer. So there you have it in a nutshell. I hope nobody brings that up again. Thank you.
I won't be asking the town council for $47 million, though, Dick.
Thank you.
Sorry to disappoint you, but
I don't want it.
I know. I was just adding some levity to the
Yes, I
mix
know.
there. Anybody else have anything that they would like to add here to the meeting tonight?
No, this isn't a meeting.
That's true. To the conversation that we're having here tonight.
Well, can I say one other thing then?
Yes, of course you may.
One of the favorite discussions on this panel, Mrs. Held, is Jamestown's relationship with this town. And last night, Mr. McGuinn, for more than the second time, waved around the fact that he has an editorial that I wrote back when we were building this school, that I felt that Jamestown should pay for their share of the building. I still feel that way, okay? But that ship sailed when the school was built and the agreement was made with Jamestown. And by that I mean, we agreed to build a school that would accommodate our student population and the Jamestown student population. The then superintendent of schools refused to say to Jamestown at that point in time, if we build the school to accommodate your students, then we would like you to sign on the bond with us for that portion of the school that will accommodate Jamestown. Now, I think that's a reasonable request, but the superintendent did not do that, okay? And I say that only because I'm tired of hearing Mr. McGuinn throw my name out as I said that we should do this and now I've got something else. The ship sailed. The contract was done. The school was built. It accommodates Jamestown, and we're very happy to have you here. And I'm not complaining about that. But it's time for that to stop being said. We're all very happy to have Jamestown here. This story about the $266,000 that the town is not receiving in bond money is crazy. The amount of overhead that is added to the operation of the high school by having Jamestown here is minimal, because we're here regardless. We own the building, we have the teachers, it's all here. And what we add to have Jamestown's 200 or so students is minimal for what they pay for us to have them here. And they're good students, they're great students. So hopefully that puts that to bed and I don't have to hear that I think Jamestown should pay for the building. They're here, we enjoy them, and I hope they stay here a long time.
I would like to say something, if that's all right.
yes,
Thank
please.
you. I appreciate your words. I would like to correct the record. We did pay towards the costs of the bond for a number of years after the school was built. I think you had an accounting issue within North Kingstown, that it was the town that was paying the bond costs and we were paying tuition to the school committee, but it's all the same money. I mean, whatever money we were paying the school department is money the town didn't have to fund to the school department. So it didn't seem to be as though it should have been as big of an issue as it was, but we were paying towards the bonding costs for a long period of time. And personally, I would have voted as a Jamestown School Committee member against signing on to the bond, because we have absolutely no control over anything you do with your buildings. We have no use, we can't use the building, and your previous school also included our students, so it wasn't that you were doing anything differently because of our numbers of students were such a small percentage of your total that the construction costs would not have been appreciably different at all. You actually went over your enrollment slightly, your capacity on the new building slightly for 4 years, maybe, I think, because of Jamestown students. But other than that, it's been under capacity. And I do appreciate the fact that you said that the costs, your incidental costs of having us here, are exceeded by the revenue. The estimates by your own business office are that it's has been about $1.4 million net gain to you. So we appreciate not hearing that we're not paying our fair share, because our taxpayers wonder, why are you guys making such a large profit?
It isn't, I was just going to say, it isn't you guys,
Wouldn't the
because
neighborly thing to do be charge us only
it's
your
not the
profits?
entire school committee that
No,
has that problem.
I know. But
I was just trying to explain
yes.
his waiving that editorial, and I haven't changed my position, but the ship has sailed.
Yes.
It's done.
Yeah.
Move on.
I think the analysis that we had heard most recently about that we're sort of tenants, it's a lease arrangement. We use the facilities, we pay you a rate that we hope we work out and is fair to everybody to use your facilities, but we don't have any control or ability to use the building in the way that North Kingstown does. Anyway, thank you.
Anything else that anyone would like to say? All right, well, for a non-meeting, but a get-together of like-minded citizens, we're now at 9:30, so I think we had a good discussion on things, and hopefully next time we get together and we truly have a quorum, we will have discussed many of these items so we can move through them quickly. So, thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a nice evening. Thanks.